Joining me now is Todd Bensman. Todd has been watching what's going on the border. In fact, Todd has been down over in Mexico. Todd, welcome to the broadcast. Thanks for joining us.
Good to be here. Thanks for having me again.
Thank you. Your new book, what is it and where can they get it?
Well, it's called Overrun: How Joe Biden Unleashed the Greatest Border Crisis in US History. It is scheduled to be published in February as the new Congress comes in, but it is available for pre-order. Everything you ever wanted to know about why this border crisis is bedeviling the country like it is.
Indeed. Hope folks will order it. It's a great book, like your last one, I'm sure. All right, you sent us some videos along the way. You want to call them up and Logan will play them? What are we going to see here?
Well, I just got back from the Tijuana, San Diego border, and then on the Mexican side, and then a city called Mexicali, which is about another 2 hours drive east on the Mexican side. I was down there for about a week, sampling what's been happening in that part of the border. One of the stories, it's not out yet, I'm in the middle of producing it, is going to be about this Muslim nonprofit that is aiding and abetting the movement and shelter of immigrants from Islamic countries. Now, when this first opened over the summer, there was a little flurry of very, I'll just say, uncritical press reporting. What the heck? It was puffery, puff reporting on this place, and nobody ever really went down there to investigate what was actually happening, who was coming through there, how things were doing. And that was one of my purposes for going there, was to report on this nonprofit. And just to give you a little preview of what I found, it was that I was surrounded by Chechens from Chechnya, have discovered this place online. And so you have a lot of these kind of Russian-speaking immigrants from the Chechnya province of Russia, but also Tajikistanis. That's something else what you're seeing here, but also Tajikistanis and Yemenis and people from all of the Stan countries were down there, you know, taking shelter and food and preparing to cross into the United States. This comes as we have reached the highest number of immigrants crossing the border who are on the FBI's terrorism watch list, 98 in fiscal year 2022. That's in addition to another 16 from last year. So we're at 114 people who are actually already on the watch list. And I would not be surprised to report that a great many of them went through this nonprofit in Tijuana first. The other story that I was covering there had to do with a brand new way that the Biden administration is allowing mass immigration to happen legally.
Okay, before we get to that, that's the second point. I want to go back to the Chechens. Because the Chechens, I want you to show those pictures again. There's a mosque in Tijuana, and the mosque in Tijuana got a nonprofit, and they're moving Chechens and others, scary people, into the U.S. Now, of course, I know the term Chechens, and of course, I thought, wait a minute, Chechens, Russia. And sure enough, they live in Chechnya, a republic of Russia. So I guess what I'm asking here is, how do we know Putin isn't working with this? Because we know that Putin has funded and trained Islamists through the Kremlin, not according to me, but according to former KGB officers that I have interviewed. They're in my documentary. We know that Alexander Zelensky, or Alexander, whatever his name was. Zelensky, thank you. The guy that everyone knows, his bald head in the hospital bed, dying. Why? Because he used to work with Putin. He used to be a part of that KGB and FSB. And he would bring in the number 2 guy with Al-Qaeda into Russia. It was his job to shepherd him in and out. And then he got disenchanted with what was going on and things that were happening, and he began to write books, and he began to spill the beans. And I guess he had tea with the wrong people, and they put poison in his plutonium or something in his tea, and he died. But we know he was reporting that he was using the Islamist, training the Islamists, funding the Islamists. So again, how do we know that these Chechens aren't being shoved here through Putin, who's preparing for war with us, along with China and Iran and North Korea?
Well, there is a very aggressive Chechen battalion fighting in Ukraine as well. Somehow, after a really long and vicious war where Putin subjugated the Chechen area, that you would wonder why they are, it's like a Stockholm syndrome or something going on with the Chechens. But it is true that some of them have gotten in league with the Russian government, with the oligarchs and all the rest of them. I'm guessing they're getting paid. I don't know. But the issue is we don't know who any of these people are coming across the border. We have no idea. I spent a lot of time with these Chechens and trying to ask them questions, and they spent just as much time deflecting my questions, demanding my phone, making sure that I didn't take any photos of them or film. Now, I spent a lot of time with immigrants all over the Latin America and Central America, and I don't think I ever had any problem taking photos of immigrants. They're perfectly fine with it for years and years, except these guys. Absolutely.
And you're saying the Chechens didn't want you taking their pictures?
Absolutely, but in an aggressive way.
So when these guys come to America, they're not coming here to go join our bowling alleys and take up knitting. What are they coming here for?
Well, they're going to claim asylum. Putin was mean to me or whatever. But the problem is that a great many Chechens have been implicated. I'm not saying all Chechens are terrorists. We can't say that. But when there is a terror attack in Europe or somewhere else, very often Chechens are in the center of it. So are Tajikistanis. I met Tajiks. I also met Uzbekistanis at this place. These are from countries that are heavily Islamicized, and people are radicalized, and they are involved in terrorism plots and networks with Al Qaeda and ISIS. So when the people that I interviewed did answer questions, one of the questions I asked was, when you they're flying into Dubai on their Russian passports. Then they're flying to Brazil, and then from Brazil to Mexico City, and then from Mexico City to Tijuana, which has a big airport. And then they get out and they go hang out at this place until they can figure out how to get over. Well, the question I had for 3 or 4 of them was, when you landed in the Mexican airport, did anybody take you aside at the inspections at customs area and interview you and ask you some questions? And the answer was no. And also the same with the Tijuana airport. So nobody on the Mexican side is paying any attention whatsoever to questioning them. Why are you coming here? Who are you? Let me run your background and fingerprints. Let me give your names to the Americans and have them run your biometrics. None of the usual stuff that is supposed to happen. Remember, I wrote a book called America's Covert Border War that was all about these programs, these counterterrorism programs. And it really appears like none of the things that I write about in my book are actually happening with these guys.
What you mean the things you warned about that need to be done to stop these jihadis from coming over the border?
These are the things that we have been doing for 15, 20 years with the Mexicans. There's a good reason why we haven't had a terror attack from the southern border, because the programs that we put in place worked pretty well. But the programs are not happening now.
I want you to put those pictures back up again as he's talking. I mean, this is, again, I don't know where else this is being reported. This is a huge, huge story. Muslim migrant nonprofit in Tijuana moving Chechens and others inverted folks over the border. These are very scary people, very concerning people. This should be all over the conservative outlets. I don't hear it and see it. I mean, how many outlets are picking you up to talk about this tonight?
Well, I haven't written the story yet. You're getting a preview at
Oh,
this
we're
point.
getting breaking news. All right.
You're getting breaking news, but I will be writing this whole thing next week or this week, later this week, and hope to publish it and the video and the photos and everything that I learned when I was down there at this mosque that's
Wow.
taking in all these.
Well, if you get any more information when you come back, I think this is a huge story. Real quick, I got another guest holding. Tell me the second story about what Biden's doing as that footage rolls. Keep rolling that.
So what you're looking at here is a Mexicali, city of Mexicali shelter where the city officials are working in conjunction, close partnership with the American Customs and Border Protection to hand off, escort thousands of immigrants legally to the Americans on humanitarian parole. And I was able to get into this center and watch this process unfold between the Mexicans and the Biden administration. And while I was there, I also was in Tijuana and spent a lot of time on this program. This program is happening border wide, all the way from the Pacific coast to the Gulf of Mexico, where where immigrants are just being rubber stamped into the country and brought in at the ports of entry and just paroled in under this thing called humanitarian parole. And there are thousands and thousands of them just pouring in this way, but you can't see them because it's behind government walls and fencing and inside shelters like this. But they're bringing in just like regular Mexicans and El Salvadorans and like anybody and everybody who asks. All they have to do is just have a story about, oh, I have a story of woe, something bad happened to me where I live. And the Biden administration is expanding this program, and they talk about, the Biden administration often talks about creating legal pathways over the border. This is it. This is what they're talking about when they talk about legal pathways. So in the future, as this thing grows over the next 2 years of the Biden administration, I think the majority of the migration over the borders will be legal. They're turning it from crossing between through the brush over the
Which means
river.
we have no border, which now, of course, fits the plan that the Biden administration has come out talking about now, a North American Union, merging America, Mexico, and Canada. There's no border.
Exactly. Well, I mean, right now I think it's still in the minority. Most of the people are crossing illegally, but I think what's happening is that the Biden administration for the next 2 years is going to be transitioning to what I'm going to report here in the next couple days with this secret, uh, this new program that they're doing called humanitarian parole. It's escorted immigrants all day over these ports of entry.
And how many millions do you think will come over to that five? I mean, we got 5.5 million so far since Biden came in. How many will this add to it?
Well, first of all, we won't be able to call it illegal immigration because technically
It'll
they
be legal,
legalized them before they crossed.
right?
That's the whole trick. They don't have to deal with this politically problematic
How big will the number be?
number that keeps going up and up and up. So you'll have to pay attention to this new number, which, by the way, was about 75,000 came over between or at the ports of entry in 2021, and 175,000 came over during 2022 at the ports of entry, which suggests that this program already is having a major uh, impact and it's being expanded. The one that I visited in Mexicali just opened in uh, September. So it's only been open 6 weeks when I got there. And they're already tripling their capacity. There's a huge construction project. There are 7 shelters that are feeding into this to this handoff program over the border. And those shelters tell me that they're expanding even more and more as word
Wow.
spreads around this free legal entry. The
Wow.
entire time that they're in these shelters, the United Nations IOM, Office of Immigration of International Migration, is providing food and shelter and clothing and support. And American lawyers are all down in there coaching them about how to do asylum and to qualify for humanitarian parole. And you've got psychologists down there that are giving them the papers that they need to show the Americans. They're filing police reports for crimes they supposedly suffered in their home countries years ago,
Wow.
and then getting those faxed in as evidence for. And I had one shelter manager tell me on the record that now the government of Tijuana, the city government, has gotten corrupt, and now they're charging 10,000 pesos a head to get them on the list to get over. So now you're going to have this whole system is just creating this system of corruption about it, where the migrants are going to have to pay. Anyway, I've got all of this.
Okay, so let me ask you this, because I got one more guest to squeeze in. Are you going to be publishing an article at cis.org?
Yeah, I'm working on it right now. It was due earlier today.
All right, let's get you back on. Let's get you back on before the week is over when it's out and go through this a little more detail, because I got a lot more questions. And I think this first story that you talked about is so shocking. A Muslim mosque shoving people through in Tijuana, Chechens and others. I mean, very, very shocking.
Look, nobody has covered that story.
No, they have not.
There was a brief announcement. NPR did a really nice puff piece for him. I mean,
good grief. All right, let's get you back. It'll be at cis.org. Let me know when it comes out. We'll promote it, have you back on. I mean, we got a lot. We could have done an hour with you. cis.org, cis.org. Give the name of your new book again.
It's available for pre-order. Overrun: How Joe Biden Unleashed the Greatest Mass Migration Crisis in U.S. History.
Wow. Thank you so much, as always, Todd.
Thank you.
Wow. Great work.